Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rotoworld Football Show. I am Patrick Daugherty, joined as always by Denny Carter, Kyle Dvorchak, Pat Kerrane. As we get ready to preview the entire Week 5 slate, we're going to go in depth on some of the week's biggest games, including the Bengals at the Ravens and the Chiefs hosting the Raiders. We will touch on all the week's hot button fantasy players. But first, guys, I know a lot of you don't know that there's a world beyond football. But as you can see from my shirt, there's something much more important in life. That is called the St. Louis Cardinals in the Major League Baseball playoffs. By the time you're listening to this, Phillies Cardinals could be underway in the wild card round. And I just want to ask you guys a few questions about baseball, just real quick. Do you know who Shohei Ohtani is first?
I am familiar with who he is, yes.
You're familiar with Shohei Ohtani is? That's
yes.
Good. That's a good.
The greatest player to ever play? Is that who we're talking about?
Do any of you know?
What's his deal? He plays like multiple positions or something?
He does.
Yeah, he's like one of the best pitchers and one of the best hitters.
He's a power hitter and an elite top of the rotation ace.
He's so cool. I love it. It's one of the only things
sweet.
that's redeemable about baseball in the year of our Lord 2022. Like he's so cool. That's awesome.
He's basically unparalleled in both American and Japanese history. He is a model breaker. Kerrane, you would hate him because he would destroy every one of your spreadsheets.
No, I think
he legit is a spreadsheet breaker. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
I enjoy the spreadsheet breakers, you know?
No, you don't. Do any of you know, now we'll go a little further down the ballot. Do any of you know what team Aaron Nola plays for?
He's a pitcher for the Phillies, right?
I think.
But you're a DFS MLB bro now. You know these things.
Kyle's on Battle of the Bets every day.
I won our Battle of the Bets on all baseball props because it was like middle of the week and it was no football even close. No college football. NFL football obviously has a break from Monday to Thursday. And I was just like running the numbers and trying to pull up random pitcher projections for strikeouts or whatever. And I somehow came out and won. Also, I took the fishiest bet in the world and took Aaron Judge home run. But
what team is Aaron Judge on, by the way?
He's a Yankees, and he looks like the Predator. So of course I'm going to bet the home runs for Kyle, Aaron Judge.
I don't want to put you on the spot here, Kyle, but would you mind asking Pat some questions about baseball to see if he knows it?
Pat, why do I know who Lars Nootbaar is?
Because he mashes righties. He leads off for the St. Louis Cardinals from time to time, and he has the greatest name in human history.
Lars Nootbaar. Is that how you say it, right?
Lars Nootbaar.
It's one of the funniest things
I wouldn't have
I've
believed
ever
you
heard in my life.
if you'd asked us that.
Yeah, no, he's a great platoonman for our birds. He makes
I do know one thing, Pat. There is a Hunter Renfroe, right, in baseball?
There are Hunters Renfroe in American professional sports now. This one, a power hitter for the Milwaukee Brewers.
Yes,
who are our arch enemies. We hate them. They stink. They choke. They miss the playoffs. It's too bad, really. Actually.
Yeah, you sound devastated.
Yeah, it's too bad. It's way too bad. We need to get the football show started, but real quick, name one Los Angeles Dodger. Pat Kerrane, go. Freddie Freeman. Kyle, can you name another Dodger?
Clayton Kershaw.
There you go. Actually,
was it? Is he on the Dodgers? All right.
Yeah.
Mookie Betts, Justin Turner, Trey Turner, David Thompson.
Baseball, bro. Look at him go.
I was gonna take some of those guys.
No. I took the good ones. You got to name the bad oones.
I was gonna say Mookie Blaylock.
Kyle knows way too much about baseball. We know way too much about football, which is what we're getting into now. Meeting as division rivals, trying to stabilize after shaky starts. The Ravens host the Bengals as 3-point home favorites. Denny, we will begin with the Ravens running game, where J.K. Dobbins saw a much heavier workload in Week 4. I said it was likely only because Justice Hill departed mid-game with an injury, but Denny, you fact-checked me in the email. By the way, don't ever humiliate me like that in front of everyone else. You pointed out that Justice Hill actually departed later in the game, and he was getting a bigger workload before that. So just what do we think we can expect going forward from Jay?
I actually didn't mean to fact check you in front of everybody.
No. It actually is fine.
I'm sorry.
What do we expect from J.K. Dobbins?
Yeah. All right. Listen. J.K. Dobbins last week finally saw an increased snap share. He had the 6th highest expected fantasy points among running backs in Week 4. He saw 41% of the team's rushing attempts, while Lamar Jackson saw 34%. This is a huge shift in really how the Ravens offense has been operating through the early season. Importantly, J.K. Dobbins saw 4 of the team's 6 goal line snaps. He only ran a route on 37% of the dropbacks versus Buffalo last week, but really, like, I feel like, no Baltimore running back is going to be super involved, and we're not going to be banking on like huge PPR production out of that backfield. So that doesn't bother me too much. But yeah, I think that Dobbins is back-ish, and maybe Gus Edwards will come in there and ruin things eventually. But for this week, I think it's clearly him. Justice Hill I believe is going to be out with a hamstring injury. That leaves Mike Davis as the RB2. So I think Dobbins has a pretty safe floor.
Has there been an update on Gus Edwards? He has been designated to return practicing. John Harbaugh said, we'll see how it looks. It doesn't sound like he's going to play this week, though. And
yeah, when you get designated return, you have a 21-day window to actually be officially brought back to the roster. And teams can obviously use the entirety of that 21-day window. And when your coach is like, yeah, he seems like he's kind of on the right path to maybe playing sometime in the year of our Lord 2022. I don't think we'll see him this week. I think he'll come back and maybe be Gus Edwards is a really good runner, but I think he'll come back and be maybe a part of the offense in weeks, 7, 8, 9.
Right.
So when you say he's back-ish, I feel pretty good because the offense has just been putting up numbers. So even if he isn't going to get more than 15 carries or whatever, I call me crazy. I want to get excited about seeing J.K. Dobbins. He's a good runner.
Yeah, you could do worse.
I didn't jam him into the top 24, but he is getting close to that point, especially with bye weeks about to begin, where there was no light at the end of the J.K. Dobbins tunnel after week 3. Suddenly there is after week 4. But there wasn't that many explosive plays from J.K. Dobbins in week 4. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, the metrics are not fantastic so far for Dobbins.
Yeah, his production came on two red zone, like goal line touchdowns. He got like a little shovel pass that he bumped in, another goal line touchdown. He got blown up at the goal line. He could have actually had 3 as well.
Yeah.
So, it was just the usage was strong, but we're still waiting for him to be J.K. Dobbins. But I'm kind of willing to bet on him eventually becoming the J.K. Dobbins we want to see.
Kerrane, I have a different question. It seemed like you had some J.K. Dobbins thoughts, or am I just misreading your face? Are you trying to stifle laughter?
I was still trying to stifle laughter from earlier. I felt like I was in church or something where you're not allowed to laugh.
Yeah, no, we really sorry to the listeners. We do take them behind the email curtain fairly often.
I hope they enjoy it.
Yeah, we take them behind the email curtain here on the Rotoworld Football Show. Kerrane, my other side, it's been a slow start for Jamar Chase. It's been a very hot start for T. Higgins. Is there anything interesting in their underlying usage? Or is it just, as it appears, 2 elite players kind of alternating production? What's going on with Jamar Chase and T. Higgins?
Yeah, so I would note that Jamar Chase ran a route on 97% of dropbacks last week. He's at 99% for the season. T. Higgins was at 83% last week. So there's been, I've seen some stuff on Twitter, people noting like when these guys are out on the field together, like Higgins is outproducing him. I think, even with that, you should expect Chase to be out there more, which, definitely matters. And then, but when you look at their per route volume this year, Higgins has seen more target volume per route, which is, pretty important. Here's the thing. So I dug in a little bit, and when you look at which guy is facing double teams, it's heavily tilted towards Chase. Chase has been double teamed on 55 routes this year, trailing only Cooper Kupp. That's 30% of his routes. Higgins is at 20%. So that 10% difference is comparable to the difference between Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, who have an 11% difference. It's comparable to the difference between DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, who are also at an 11% difference. So I think you kind of think of them similar to like a Metcalf Lockett, where, we're maybe not going to be able to predict who's going to have the big game, but it's still generally going to be driven more by Chase than Higgins. And I think in a game like this, where it's got a very high ceiling in terms of the total, we have a high ceiling in terms of what the Bengals offense might be able to do through the air against the secondary. I think Chase still has like a materially higher ceiling than Higgins, because he's driving the offense forward. And then Higgins is able to benefit from just how good Chase is in a really impactful way, because he's also a star. But I think the talent difference here still, to me, points to Chase being the top guy.
And you could maybe say the same thing about Higgins, but with Chase, it's important to remember, too, he was having a really disappointing game last week. I think he had 3 catches for 35 yards, and it was still disappointing in the end. He catches like a 40-yard pass in the closing moments of the fourth quarter, and suddenly he's at 81 yards. And just not that was a great game for fantasy managers, but just a reminder, like Jamar Chase can win fantasy weeks on 1 to 2 plays because one of them can be a 70-yard touchdown. And basically just keep the faith in Jamar. This is actually a pep talk to myself. Yes. please, God. Kyle, Rashad Bateman has missed back-to-back practices with a mid-foot injury, probably not going to play for this very high-total game. Are there any intriguing Ravens pass catchers not named Mark Andrews? Denny and I kind of talked about Devin Duvernay earlier in the week, who maybe is the only guy worth talking about. Any interesting Devin Duvernay facts and maybe a non-Duvernay name?
Yeah, I mean, for the Duvernay side of it, he actually looks pretty solid. I mean, he's third on the team in air yards. He's actually second on the team in yards per route run. I think that's more of a Lamar Jackson plus Devin Duvernay role kind of stat, where when Devin Duvernay comes on, he runs deep routes and he gets targeted. But if he's going to continue running deep routes whenever he's on the field now more than ever, I kind of like him as a wide receiver 3 type flex option. After that, I do think it'll be sort of by committee in the sense of Patrick Ricard will get a few more snaps. Isaiah Likely, the backup tight end, who's actually played a decent role in the offense, will get a few more snaps. Maybe if you're down bad in a sort of, I don't think Isaiah Likely is on the top 20 range of tight ends, but if you're down bad in a tight end premium sense, you're looking at this game, has a high total, it has possibly no Rashad Bateman. I actually don't hate Isaiah Likely, but I really do think it is a strong committee by everyone who isn't Rashad Bateman if Rashad Bateman doesn't play, other than Devin Duvernay, who's been clearly the second receiver, which traditionally for Baltimore hasn't been a great option because they use their tight end 1 as a wide receiver 1. They use their wide receiver 1 as a clear wide receiver 2. But if we get Devin Duvernay playing a ton of routes, deep shot, Lamar Jackson, like I think there's a chance for him to go wide receiver 3 this week.
Can I give folks a quick snippet or some insight into how much Devin Duvernay has been owning the regression bros?
Dude, it's hard.
This guy has converted 99% of his air yards through 4 games. Okay, this is impossible.
He also kick return touchdowns. So the week that you're like, man, he caught 0 passes for 0 yards and 0 touchdowns, and then he gets you 6 points anyways. Yeah. I think he actually did more than that week. But he also has 3 scores plus the kick return touchdown. I think he's a legit good player who just is in a specialized role, but that role should grow this week.
Are you guys at all concerned about the offense with Bateman out? Because Bateman's been super efficient, 11.0 yards per target, quite good.
Bateman's really
I guess I'm a little bit more bearish that Duvernay is going to continue that efficiency. And then, like, also, even if he does, Tylan Wallace was operating as a deep threat last week a little bit. And Demarcus Robinson was out there. Like, I feel like that's a pretty big downgrade in terms of the ability to stretch the defense. So I don't know. It makes me a little nervous, more nervous than I would be. I guess I want to be really, really excited about Mark Andrews, and Bateman being out would be maybe a reason to be a little more cautious.
Sounds like Kerrane's down on the Shohei Ohtani of the NFL, model breaker Devin Duvernay. That's something to look forward to. You guys may not have noticed it. We made a little American history this week. We are sending 2 winning football teams to London, England for the first time in the history of the London series. This is the 32nd game, and it's the first time both teams have been above 500. Just absolutely mind-blowing. Kyle, what do we need to know about the New York Giants and the Green Bay Packers in Londinium?
I mean, like, you don't have to get up early for this game, honestly.
You do, actually.
I literally, in the sense of the listener, you don't have to get up early. I will actually be blurbing this game. I don't think the Giants will have Kenny Galladay. Obviously, Sterling Shepard is done. It looks like maybe Kadarius Toney and Wan'Dale Robinson will play. And because we have ambiguous situations for them, I'm benching all of the receivers for this team. We saw in week 2, Kadarius Toney actually, after playing, I think it was 7 snaps in week 1, he actually picked up his role a little bit as a rotational player, and that cut into Richie James's role. So to me, if you don't know for sure if Richie James is playing every single snap, or if Kadarius Toney is cutting into him, what does Wan'Dale Robinson play? And this is not a passing attack that we're like, I want every third receiver on this team. Bench all of them. You don't need to take the risk to play any of them. Last week, Saquon Barkley saw over 40% of the team's yards on the yards total, right? Rushing and receiving yards. And on the year, he's way over 40%. It's clear that this is a let's give Saquon Barkley the ball and find out what happens type of offense. So play Saquon Barkley and frankly, play no one else. I'm not taking the gamble with anyone else. On the other side, I'm kind of a little excited. Romeo Doubs and Alan Lazard, they both have route rates over 90% last week. On the year, they both have target shares over 18%. And for me, Romeo Doubs in a system, or at least in an offense, a culture, maybe you'd call it, that has never rewarded rookie receivers. If they're giving him such a role such early in the year, I kind of expect it to grow. Maybe that's just, sort of rookie optimism from my dynasty brain. But if Romeo Doubs is running a route, I don't know. If Romeo Doubs is running a route in almost every single Aaron Rodgers dropback and he has an 18% plus target share this early in the year, I kind of want to bet on him going forward, even if I don't think he's clearly an alpha one. I think he's a 1A, 1B for a quarterback who's shown a very clear propensity to throw incredible touchdown rates, even if they're not, the best passing attack in the league.
So, Kai, I think you described Aaron Rodgers expanding his mind and actually targeting rookie wide receivers. So maybe what he's doing off the field is actually affecting him on the field in a positive way.
I see what you did.
Yeah. Before he had gotten involved in hallucinogenics, he would have never, ever, ever targeted Romeo Doubs as a rookie. We haven't any final thoughts on this game? Anyone have any Packers? Anybody else hear about the Packers-Giants game?
So I think this is going to be kind of a low volume game in general. I completely agree with Kyle's assessment of the New York side, but I think that the Packers consistently kind of play down to their opponents in a way, especially in terms of the pace of play. They play consistently slow. I think this year, they have been a run-heavy team or run-first team, borderline run-heavy, to start the year. And I think we're going to continue seeing them in that mold against the Giants. Even if they have some success to start this game, I think we could see them pivot to kind of a assault the game away type of approach pretty quickly. So I'm worried about volume in this game. I agree about the Dobbs point. I think Lazard, I don't really want to go there. And AJ Dillon also strikes me as he's going to have to get in the end zone to really have a big game. I think Aaron Jones is pretty interesting because you can bet on kind of the long runs, the efficiency that we know we can get from him. But definitely just kind of overall a game I don't want to have a ton of pieces of.
Pat, Daugherty, I know, the NFL is a little weird right now, but have you ever thought about giving me a good game?
I will let the people know you did volunteer to do this.
No, it actually does help my schedule. So it is very useful to have this game.
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to see the emails, honestly.
Yeah, let's pull them up the emails. Hold on, I'm gonna do my favorite thing.
No. He's right. Don't check the emails. So we don't need other things unveiled. He's right.
In one of the largest spreads you will see all year, the Bills are 2 touchdown home favorites against a quarterback changing Steelers team. Denny, they're changing horses midstream, going from Mitch Trubisky to Kenny Pickett. What do the folks need to know about Steelers of Buffalo?
Yeah, well, we talked about it on the Monday evening waiver show. George Pickens, with all that dog in him, is very interesting now with Kenny Pickett under center for Pittsburgh. He caught 4 or 5 targets from Pickett in the second half against the Jets. He had 42% of the Steelers' air yards in week 4. I'm trying not to overstate it too much, but it feels like Pickens has a legit ceiling moving forward, even in this matchup. I know the Steelers look super down bad here. Okay. Their implied total is hideous. They're in Buffalo. I get it, but the Bills secondary is banged up. I really think that Pickens is going to challenge Deontay Johnson for the wide receiver 1 role here and moving forward. So if you have Pickens, if you got him off the waiver wire, you feel pretty good about playing him this week. I again, try not to overstate it, but I think he has tremendous upside here.
I think we're forgetting about the classic Mike Tomlin principle of basically winning every game where he's a touchdown underdog and losing every game where they're 10-point favorites. That is kind of the Steelers tradition. So what I'm saying is the Steelers will easily win this game.
Right. And then on the other side, just real quick, Devin Singletary has the role that he had at the end of last year. He's running a lot of routes. He's seeing almost all the carries. Still not a ceiling play by any means, but is a good play here against a run funnel Steelers defense. So I think he's an RB2 this week.
I'll say one thing about Kenny Pickett. We keep talking about how this is good for George Pickens, and we're not trying to overstate Kenny Pickett as some aggressive downfield passer, because that was not his MO. He's not Mr. Challenge down the field. It's just that anyone who occasionally throws down the field is a massive upgrade on Ben Roethlisberger and Mitch Trubisky. And even just like occasionally looking down the field creates a huge like benefit and potentially more ceiling for the guys like George Pickens and everything. So it's not like we're trying to tell you like Kenny Pickett's going to be like a superstar. It's this that he might try to actually play the quarterback position and take downfield shots. Is that right, Pat? I saw you nodding.
No, yeah, I agree with that. I think, Pickett will make this offense a little bit more fun. I guess I'm a little bit more optimistic about Deontay Johnson. This was the only game last week where he dropped below a 30% target share. And I understand that came with a quarterback change, and maybe they're not going to have that connection. But
it might have because he was literally dropping the ball constantly. I just think it was one of those days where like God.
I watched this game. I blurbed this game. He had it was a little high, right? But he had a pass thrown right to his hands, right above his head. Tipped it, interception. Great stuff, Deontay. Classic.
Sorry,
he gets open though. He's always had issues with drops. He gets open. He literally has been benched for drops, but he gets open at will. So I think, eventually we're going to see a connection there. But I do agree, Denny, that, pretty bullish for Pickens.
I think we could see a connection with Deontay this game, by the way. They're going to need like those easy conversions, and that's what Deontay Johnson does. But I might have overreacted to George Pickens. The wide receiver 4 tier right now is just so bad. It's like all the Tyler Boyds of the world. So I got George Pickens into the top 40, which might seem really point chasey, especially against this elite Bills defense. But he made the meme play in week 3. Then he has the stealing day in week 4. He's like checking all the boxes, and another one of which is getting improved quarterback play. So I think there are genuine reasons to be excited in point chase with Mr. George Pickens. The Miami Dolphins and New York Jets are 2 teams playing more exciting football in 2022, on a sliding scale, of course, especially when we talk about the New York Jets. Tua Tagovailoa has been a huge part of that for the Dolphins, but a sideline for week 5 with a concussion. Kyle, Denny is on the record as liking Teddy Bridgewater as a week 5 streamer. I agreed with him. Do you agree?
Yeah, I don't want to be I'm a zoomer. I should like any quarterback who's under 25 years old and think anyone over 25 should kick rocks. But the Dolphins have a 24 implied team total. They are top 5 in pass rate over expected. And this game is actually kind of a close total, probably because Teddy Bridgewater is in, but who's counting, right? And they have 2 wide receivers ranked top 2. They have the best 2 wide receivers in yards per route run. They literally have the 2 receivers who on a per route basis are making the most of their opportunities. The situation could not be more perfect for Teddy Bridgewater to step in. Do I think Teddy Bridgewater is great? No, but do I think he is stepping in to the best situation for a backup quarterback that we'll probably see this year? Yeah, I think so. So to me, yeah, I think he is one of the best streaming options this week. I think he's a top 15 to 16-ish quarterback, and it feels gross to say it, but everything is perfect other than him being Teddy Bridgewater. And even if he is Teddy Bridgewater and he just does the thing where he throws short completions and it's not exciting, he has the best receivers to complete short passes to. So yeah, I think he's top 15.
So with, by the way, we kind of like over credit coaching and under credit quarterbacks, but I think Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle leading the league in yards per route run. I think we can kind of say maybe that's a coaching stat and not Tua, because Tua's been very good, but Mike McDaniel's designing some elite offense. They schemed up a 64-yard catch to Tyreek Hill after Tua left the game in week 4. And so not to take too much of the credit away from the quarterback because it's a dangerous game to play, but this offense has really lived up to the hype in terms of just its play design.
It's a fantasy-friendly offense. It creates good environments, very pass-heavy, focused on 2 explosive guys. 12 of Bridgewater's 23 throws went to either Waddle or Hill last week. So it's really good for fantasy.
Very, very good for fantasy. Kerrane, I'm hoping Zach Wilson is good for fantasy and that he can carry these exciting young pass catchers. What did we see in his 2022 debut? What is there to like moving forward? Who seems like the preferred receiver, so on and so forth?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing for the Jets side of this is probably Teddy Bridgewater as well, because we probably need Teddy Bridgewater to be pushing the Jets a little bit here. And if the Jets are dropping back and passing frequently, like they were with Joe Flacco, I think they could have a lot of success. The Dolphins rank 31st in allowed per dropback. They're ranked 32nd in dropback success rate. They're ranked 29th in coverage grade. So this is definitely, a team that you can have some success through the air against. It does make me a little bit nervous, though, to be too excited about Zach Wilson. He had a -7% completion percentage over expected last week, currently ranks ahead of only Justin Fields, Baker Mayfield, and Trey Lance in that accuracy metric. So that's bad. And that also was the issue with Wilson last year. He was not accurate last year. He finished dead last in CPOE at -9.6%. So it's kind of like same old problems with Zach Wilson, still inaccurate. And the other problem is that the Jets hit him last week. They were pass first in their first 3 games, but then they went ultra run heavy last week. They had a -10% pass rate over expected. They were -17% on 1st and 10, which is super run heavy. This is the type of game plan you put out there when you're trying to hide inaccurate quarterback. So I, again, think that we need the Dolphins to push for us to really feel confident about any of these Jets pass catchers.
By the way, Pat, you're forgetting one thing, and I was reminded of this by Jets fans. They got the W. Doesn't matter.
Well, I was going to say, if you're hunting for any silver lining, because it was a pretty shaky overall 2022 debut, where they did not want to put the game on his shoulders. Then they were forced to, and then he actually did produce like a game-winning drive. And
yeah, he had a good game-winning drive too. He threw like a really nice strike to think Corey Davis, and both Garrett Wilson also had one. But man, it was like, if you are doing this stuff in the final 4 or 5 minutes of the game, what if you did it for the first 30 to 40 minutes of the game? Because I didn't think Zach Wilson, I watched this game, I didn't think Zach Wilson looked particularly good for most of the game, but his 2-minute drill was very nice.
Did you say very schnice?
It was schnice. It was nasty. He was stealing. He was throwing dimes. It was a legit good 2-minute drill. And maybe do the 2-minute drill for 60 minutes or don't.
Now, did you learn that word on TikTok, Kyle?
No comment. My lawyers will actually have to address that one.
By the way, you guys may notice a subtle change in the way I talk about Zach Wilson, who I basically only ever condemned before, but now I really need him to be good for reasons I won't really get into because of a 2-quarterback league I'm in. And I mean, come on, guys. I know we joke about Zach Wilson, but he's actually getting better, right?
I mean,
I don't know.
You're like, not really.
I feel like the Sopranos are going to come after me if I talk about Zach Wilson in a negative way anymore.
Denny, I do have something else to ask you about. Is it safe to say Raheem Mostert is moving ahead of Chase Edmonds in the Dolphins' backfield?
It is safe to say that, but Chase Edmonds is still seeing some work around the goal line, so that's really annoying. But yeah, I mean, Raheem Mostert has 63% of the Dolphins' rushes over the past 3 games. He's run 20 more routes than Chase Edmonds over the past 3 weeks. I guess there's just not a whole lot of upside in this Miami backfield because, the Dolphins, like we've said many times, very pass heavy, 4th highest pass rate over expected so far this year. So Edmonds is going to be annoying for Mostert, but I think I would be much more confident starting Mostert than Edmonds, if that makes sense.
It has been weird. I almost feel like the Chase Edmonds touchdowns are just totally fluky, but they've been happening.
And he dropped one last week. Terrible one last week.
It's been really weird. Mike McDaniel trying to get a shanty on in some ways, and maybe that's one of them. Just like where he understands his running back usage, and not another person in America is allowed to.
That's right.
So thank you for that, Michael. We'll be right back after this. Just a reminder, if you don't have the NBC Sports Predictor app, go download it now. The contests are free and easy to play, and you have a shot to win thousands this weekend by predicting what will happen in college football, the Major League Baseball playoffs, on the NASCAR circuit, and in the Premier League. There's also $100,000 up for grabs by guessing the outcome between the Bengals and Ravens in our Sunday Night 7 contest. Patrick Kerrane, the Chargers and Cleveland Browns square off in a game with a 47.5 total. The Chargers are 2.5-point road favorites. It's the Chargers' second game outside the Pacific time zone in 4 weeks. The schedule makers hate them. Do fantasy players?
Fantasy players do not. Herbert, I think, looking pretty good, looking pretty healthy. He was really strong against the Texans, 3rd in EPA per play on the week, 10th in CPOE, so both efficient and accurate. I think maybe the bigger question here is if this 6th round left tackle they had filling in is for real. Jamari Salyer, he led all players in PFF's Week 4 pass blocking grades. Everybody, not just left tackles, all blockers. He was the best. So I think Pat just quit the show over that. But yeah, it
was such a smart choice to play him over Storm Norton. Storm Norton has been a career backup who every time he enters the lineup is just a turnstile at any position he plays. So I like the risk they took with it, and it turned out incredibly well. I think he ran like 40 some pass blocking plays and did not give a single pressure. So I love that you pointed this out because he played legit good football. And if that's a thing he can repeat, this team might have a chance.
We also have. Oh, go ahead.
I mean, when Kyle breaks down offensive lines, it completely rattles me. I can hardly tolerate it. Anyway, go ahead, Pat. Sorry.
I prefer it to when he does baseball. The other thing about this game is that, we probably won't have Myles Garrett, or maybe definitely won't. So I think one less guy you have to worry about. And it just all sets up, I think, for a pretty solid game from Herbert, especially after his strong game last week. Again, if this 6th round rookie doesn't turn into a pumpkin here, I don't want to be buying into it completely, but definitely exciting development for a team that lost its left tackle. I think we're firing up Big Mike. We're firing up Eckler. Everett, I think, is a decent option this week. On the other side, we have a Chargers run defense that ranks just 28th in EPA allowed per rush.
Horrible again. They were
Well, they tried. They signed a bunch of veterans to 1 year, $2 million deals, and turns out it didn't work. Who could have guessed?
It's kind of interesting because we know the Browns are going to want to run. I think the Chargers will put up points, but it could be kind of like, the Seahawks last week or something, where they are run heavy. They are, or at least balanced, but they're efficient, and it's, keeping the chains moving. And then when you look at the Chargers pass defense, they're not very good. So this actually looks like a bounce back spot for Amari Cooper. He has a 7.6 yards per target. That's below expected. He has a 26% target share, 38% air yard share. I think volume could be up pretty significantly this week. David Njoku looks like a pretty solid tight end 1 option. 87% route participation last week. That's very good. His yards per route runs not off the charts or anything. He's running a little hot in yards per target, so I would be careful about getting too carried away with Njoku. But I mean, yeah, he's a pretty solid option. And I think in general, as far as Browns passing attacks are going to go with Jacoby Brissett, this is a pretty good spot. So I kind of sneaky like this game because I think the Browns, while they're going to be conservative, should have success at pretty much everything they do.
Do you like this game enough to volunteer to write it up for the site, Pat? Maybe I heard that in your voice.
I mean, I thought I had something in my contract where I cover the lines every week, but they're playing the Patriots. So if you want to give me this, I'll take it.
I like this game.
Highest scoring team in the league.
Yeah, I like this game as a DFS game. I think it's an interesting spot with both defenses sort of getting a lot more credit than their actual EPA stats would suggest. Herbert, in the first 2 weeks, he had a sub-6 ADOT. In the past 2 weeks, he's had an ADOT of 8. The rib injury, I'm sure it hurts like hell, but it's not actually affecting the way the team is playing. So I don't care. I think this is actually a really interesting game.
Yeah,
so give it to me, Pat. So give it to me.
No, I'll take it, Pat.
No, beat me.
Oh, Pat, sounds like Pat doesn't want the highest scoring team in the league anymore, the Detroit Lions. So that's why I was giving it to their special squad. And, apparently.
I do like Dan Campbell a lot.
You want to watch Josh Reynolds? Come on, man. Who doesn't want to watch? By the way, Brandon Staley, defensive mind, could maybe consider having a good defense from time to time.
Didn't he start? Wasn't he a quarterback, though?
He was. That's true. He's a fraudulent defensive mind.
He's a fake defensive sharp.
Yeah, he's a mole. He's a mole. Yeah, yikes. Denny, the Minnesota Vikings return home from London, England as touchdown favorites against the Chicago Bears. What do the folks need to know about this game? Is Justin Fields' yardage prop over 150 this week? What do we need to know?
It should be at 99.5 at this point. But here's what I have on this game, which is just so ugly, honestly. But Chicago is the most extreme run funnel defense in the league. Dalvin Cook has 71% of the Vikings carries so far. So I suppose if they give him 40 rushing attempts here, he should crack 100 yards and maybe a touchdown. Hopefully for Dalvin Cook drafters, you could have that going for you, which is nice. Darnell Mooney coming off what I would think is an absolute ceiling game last week, 94 yards, caught 4 of 5 targets. He was top 12 in air yards among wide receivers in week 4. Once again, this is probably as good as it's going to get for Darnell Mooney, and it's not all that fantastic. So I think you need to probably in 12-team leagues, you could probably still find somebody who's a better play than Darnell Mooney in this game, in this terrible offense. Don't get too psyched up about what happened last week. And then on to Khalil Herbert. If Dave Montgomery is out again this week, do we have an update on whether he's going to play?
He has not been practicing on Wednesday or Thursday.
Right.
Yeah, that's a bad sign. He ain't playing.
Yeah. So I think we can pencil in Herbert to be, again, have a workhorse role here. He's facing off against a Minnesota defense, allowing the 7th highest EPA per rush through week 4. Khalil Herbert could just be good. Like, I think that he's just like a really good rusher. He showed that last year in 3 games without David Montgomery. He was good last week. I know he didn't get the touchdown. That's kind of, it'll hinge on that, but you're confidently playing him again against Minnesota.
Yeah, I ranked Khalil Herbert as like a high-end RB1 last week and was kind of embarrassed about it. But then, like, doing the autopsy, I mean, he did have 20 handles. He did go over 100 yards from scrimmage where the results weren't even that bad.
No.
Just needed that. He needed that tutty.
Right.
And he didn't, which the tutty might not always be coming in this offense, which I guess we have to remember when evaluating Khalil Herbert. But any parting thoughts on this game? Anyone else want to talk about the Chicago Bears?
I'd prefer not to, honestly.
I prefer, just like Bartleby, the Scrivener. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers welcome the Falcons to town as 8.5-point road underdogs. Kerrane, the Falcons are refusing to throw. The Bucs are suddenly only throwing. We'll get to Atlanta in a minute, but do we expect the Bucs' pass-first week 4 ways to be the approach going forward with Leonard Fournette struggling and Chris Godwin back in the fold? Denny and I were kind of speculating that like Tom Brady's like finally like checking into the season. He's like, all right, whatever. We tried the run first thing, not doing that anymore. I'm Kobe Bryant. I'm not passing the ball anymore. What do you think?
Well, I mean, yeah, I think there's something to the idea that he's got all his receivers back and he wants to throw the ball. I mean, this was a team that was incredibly pass heavy last year. It was really the Chiefs and the Bucs that were the two big, philosophically committed to the pass teams last year. The Bills weren't even really in that mix last year. They are this year. But when you look at the pass rate over expected from the Buccaneers last week, it was at 16%. That's tied with the Chiefs in week 2 for the second highest rate of the season. Only the Bills in week 2 as well have a higher pass rate over expected. And I believe their actual pass rate was like 89 or 90% because they were down the whole time. So you expected them to pass, and then they leaned into that even more than you would have expected. So I think this was a very bullish sign for what we can expect from the Tampa Bay pass catching crew from Brady. Obviously not going to be this pass heavy. I mean, this was an extreme outlier example, but it does show that the team has sort of recommitted itself to the pass. I expect them to be closer to this version that we saw against the Chiefs going forward than kind of that early run heavy version. That's, they were playing left-handed because everybody was hurt.
And Denny, and then on the other side of the Bucs coin, you and I talked about this a little bit earlier in the week, but what do we really think is going on with Leonard Fournette versus Rachaad White? Is this just like a 1-week blip? They fell behind early. The Chiefs were playing lights out. They kind of knew the run game was not going to get it done in week 4. Or do we think that, maybe like there isn't going to be any sort of Leonard Fournette commitment? I mean, 3 carries is obviously a fluke, but do we think Rachaad White's like actually cutting into this? Is Leonard Fournette still an RB1? What do we tell the people about Leonard Fournette?
I think he's probably like borderline RB1. I do think that the Bucs are clearly curious about a post Lenny offense and what that might look like.
Tom Brady's reading the flyer is what you're saying.
They're dabbling, and you can't blame them. I mean, we talked on the Monday show about how all of Fournette's peripheral stats, his metrics are down from what they were in 2020 and then last season. And
they didn't have that far to fall.
You're right. And right. It wasn't exactly like blowing the roof off in that regard anyway. And now it's bad. And I think the Bucs are noticing. And the important thing is that Rachaad White, who, he had 5 catches on 5 targets for 50 yards against the Chiefs, is that he got full drives. He got 2 full drives against the Chiefs. He got 2 full drives, in the first half and then in the second half. And so he wasn't just subbing in for, passing down here or there for Lenny. It was all him for certain parts of the game. Now, I don't think that you can make the leap of saying like, oh, okay, like you can plug in Rachaad White for 10 or 12 touches going forward, but definitely he needs to be rostered in every 12-team league. And I think that you're feeling queasy if you have Leonard Fournette right now.
I would hope you are watching the show live on YouTube, because you can see me and Pat Kerrane nodding as if we're at a Rage Against the Machine concert. Like, yes, this is the uprising of Rachaad White. We are very excited. He looks good, man. Every time he gets the ball, if he doesn't fumble, he looks very good.
And as Radham fans may have seen, they had to cancel the rest of their reunion show after Zach De La Rocha broke his leg. Sad news. So yeah, they're unfortunately boomerang a little bit.
Is that true?
It is
That's true. Yes, that is true.
Oh my!
He was one step away from throwing his back out.
There's like every like month someone posts like a new version of someone getting like super tilted that Rage is now woke and has been ruined by modern woke culture. Like, what did you think the machine was, man?
Right.
I cannot believe that Rage went woke. I can't believe that Arthur Smith is not going woke. He's going full 1960s. He is refusing to pass the ball. Kyle, can they really keep this up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? And by the way, we'll get to Kyle Pitts in a minute. We have a YouTube commenter that said, here comes, a Twitch commenter that said, here comes the Kyle Pitts eulogy, lol. My only show note for Kyle Pitts,
with this, man. It hurts.
My only Kyle Pitts show note was a Kyle Pitts followed by the vomit emoji. I actually managed to get an emoji in a Google Doc. So yeah, what are we expecting with the Falcons' approach this week?
I mean, I guess the upside is that Tampa Bay should kind of roll over Atlanta, but to me, given they have a bottom 5 pass rate over expected, the Bucs are actually a little worse against the run than they are against the pass. They're 15th in rush EPA on defense, and they're top 5 against the pass per EPA. To me, I think the Bucs are going to, or the Falcons are going to do what they've always done. I think they're going to try and desperately until the last minute continue to run the football, and they've been decent at it. So I have a very little amount of optimism that Kyle Pitts, who
is not practicing, by the way.
He's not practicing. They've actually scaled his snaps back. He has multiple games under 80% snap rate over the past few weeks. To me, they want to run the football. They have a decent line for blocking against the run, and they face a defense that they're actually both good against the run and against the pass, but they are worse among the two against the run. Until they're down 21 in the fourth quarter, I think we've seen Arthur Smith prove he's going to keep trying to run the football. So I feel sad about the passing attack.
Yeah. It's being reinforced. This terrible behavior is being reinforced by the winning. And Arthur Smith gave the game away last week when he was called on mic saying, we're going to run the urine. I'm keeping it clean for the kids. We're going to run the urine out of the ball. That's what
I feel like that's worse somehow. It just seems gross.
Yeah, it actually is worse.
We're going to.
That's a lot.
Way worse.
Certainly sounds ickier.
You just sound like a creepy doctor now.
Yes.
Okay.
We're going to run the piss out of the ball. You can say
all right. Well, sorry to the kids, but yeah, look, the Falcons are not going to change their formula. Folks, they're winning. It doesn't matter what fantasy managers want. Kyle Pitts is below 70% in route participation now. He doesn't even have a tight end 1 profile anymore.
Well, hang on. I got to push back on this a little bit because they are winning, but they're not going to be winning this week. They're going to have to pass. And Kyle Pitts isn't even going to play because he's got this hamstring injury. He's not practicing. So, Kyle Pitts obviously does with, we don't talk about him again. But let's talk about Drake London because they're going to be throwing a lot. It's all going to be funneling to Drake London. The dude's got a 34% target share this season. It might be at 40% this week. Might be worth 4 targets.
God, oh my God. Yeah, when you say they're actually going to have to pass, I'm like, I look at their bottom pass rate over expected, and I see that the Bucs are a little worse against that. They're good against both. They have good defense. And I'm like, oh man, how many points does Arthur Smith need to see as a deficit to realize he should throw the ball? And they've actually been a decent team throwing the ball. They're not in the bottom, like they're not in the dregs of throwing the football. They've got good receivers if you include Kyle Pitts in that sense. And I just don't think Arthur Smith cares, right? I really don't think he cares. I think he thinks he can win football by running 20 plus 20, 30 times a game. And we're going to watch that fail against the Bucs. I'm
Bucs,
down
if you're
bad.
listening, stomp these guys. Stomp them. I want you up 28 starting in the fourth quarter because we have to see if they're going to stop running the piss out of the ball.
I do like Crane's point though. I do
stomp the urine out of them.
Not that point. That is a different point that I was not trying to make. Drake London looks like an alpha receiver, and I like him in this matchup. But move on.
Denny, Arthur Smith's facts called 2 victories. Don't care about your feelings.
That's right.
Yes. They just don't. Kyle, with injuries currently defining both teams, the Patriots catch the Lions as 3-point home favorites for a contest currently totaled at 45.5. What do we need to know about this game that Kerrane will apparently be covering?
I mean, we had Amon-Ra St. Brown DNP Thursday. It doesn't seem like he's going to play. It doesn't seem like DeAndre Swift's going to play. DeAndre Swift, on the other hand, is back at practice. There's a lot of moving parts, honestly. There's a site called, I think it's NBCSportsEdge.com. You could get there actually going Rotoworld.com will redirect you back there, which is where my tabs have it saved as. So you can check on the news there because there is moving parts here. But we saw last week the way the line is playing, the way that I'll call them secondary pieces in TJ Hawkinson and even like Josh Reynolds are playing. Detroit can put up points, I would argue, against anyone. So, of course, New England probably has a decent chance of beating them this week, but I'm not too concerned that you shouldn't be playing, TJ Hawkinson as a tight end 1 or even streaming your Josh Reynolds. Honestly, the one thing that I think is actually really interesting in this game is Jamal Williams. I believe he ran a route on less than half of Jared Goff's dropbacks last week. He was out targeted by the rest of the backfield. So to me, he's the one who I kind of come at it from a DFS angle, but he's the one who's a little more shaky. The receivers in a game that they're expected to lose are pretty exciting if you include, TJ Hawkinson as a receiver. On the other side, Rhamondre Stevenson, obviously with Ty Montgomery out, he's getting all of the passing downs work, but he actually leads the team in missed tackles force. He also leads the team and carries over 15 yards. If we keep getting the Rhamondre Stevenson on the ground excelling, he's good through the air. We could be on pace for, let's call it 2.5, sort of, not 3 downs, but 2.5 down roll for Rhamondre Stevenson. I get that the offense isn't great, but I am getting more and more bullish, as I was all summer, on Rhamondre Stevenson.
I will say with Jamal Williams, the Pats' run defense has kind of been uncharacteristically bad so far. So maybe
if you have Jamal, you should probably still be playing him. I just wouldn't expect 20 carries, 6 catches, right? It's probably 18 carries, 2 catches, which is still pretty good if you got him late in the draft.
By the way, just to piggyback on what Pat said about the Pats' run defense, they've given up the 4th highest EPA per rush. I just noticed that just before the show. I had no idea they were so bad, but they were ripped last week by the Packers. The Packers did whatever they wanted on the ground.
The Lions also want to run. Like, it was so funny last week, the Seahawks and the Lions, like, neither one of them wanted to be in this high-scoring game because the Seahawks were, like, running the ball. The Lions wanted to run the ball, but then they had to throw it because the Seahawks were running too effectively. So they were both like, what are we doing to each other? I think they're going to be much more comfortable in this script with the Patriots, who probably won't be quite as, like me ripping off the Rashad Penny long touchdown runs, most likely. So, I do think you're going to see a conservative game plan on both sides, and that should help Jamal Williams succeed against the poor run defense.
I guess I should also add, because we weren't playing like Mac Jones in DFS or in most any non-super flex leagues, I hope for the listener's sake, that Mac Jones, he looks like he's back to practice. He looks like he should be able to play. But we also got Bill Belichick saying last week that, he's day to day. He has a chance of suiting up. And
he was holding his foot in his hand.
Yes, exactly.
I meant to hand this to the training staff.
We'll attach it at some point.
Yeah.
So I bet on Mac Jones playing, but I don't feel confident in that. And Brian Hoyer dealing with concussion. So we have a very wide spectrum from the passing game between Mac Jones and all the way down to Bailey Zappi, who actually didn't play particularly bad. He actually played decent in his sort of spot half start.
And not to mention all the Lions injuries. This is a game where you will definitely have to be checking Rotoworld to catch up on all the latest injury updates, because it's just a total mess. The Seahawks, Patrick Kerrane, and the wiliest man in football, Geno Smith, arrive in New Orleans as 5.5-point underdogs. Geno just won't go away, and neither will the Seahawks fans tweeting at me about it. What do we need to know about Seahawks Saints?
Yeah, so normally if I'm trying to figure out how an offense is going to do, I want to see how's this passing offense going to do, and then that'll help me decide if I like the running game. This is the Seahawks, though. And I actually do think that the running game sets up the pass for Seattle.
Pete Carroll was right. He was right all along.
He's right. He's found a way to be right. The Saints have a really good run defense. They're 5th in EPL per rush, 9th in rushing success rate, 10th in run defense grade. So I don't really like the Seahawks run game here. I think that, they're still going to run the ball a lot, Seattle. Like, they're not going to get away from it, even if they're not being successful. They weren't all that successful to begin the Lions game. Rashad Penny actually looked, I thought, terrible. And then by the end of the game, the Lions just kind of broke down and he was able to hit these long runs, looking much better. I don't think we're going to get that secondary part of it this week. The Saints will probably be able to hold up. So when you think about like Geno Smith and that type of game script, those downfield plays that he was able to hit last week, I don't think those are there. So, I think you're still starting Metcalf and Lockett. They've combined for a 54% target share, 77% air yard share. I just don't think there's quite as much upside with those guys. And then Geno, like in terms of streaming options, I think he's a lot less interesting this week. And then with Penny, like I'm considering starting Tyler Algier over Penny in a league. That's like kind of where I'm at. I'm a little nervous about Penny. I know he just had the big game and part of me wants to just plug him back in, but that's kind of like where my head's at on him. On the Saints side, it sounds like we're trending towards Dalton. He was pretty good last week, small sample, but currently ranked 7th in EPA per play and 2nd in CPOE. So both efficient and accurate. He fed Chris Olave, which Kyle said on our Friday Q&A show would happen. I was a lot more skeptical of that because, it's Andy Dalton and a deep threat. I didn't think that would mesh that well, but not only did Olave have a 26% target share, but he had a 19.4 ADOT. So continued to be used as very much a downfield threat. He looks quite startable no matter who the quarterback is. Seems to be in the midst of a true breakout season. And then, Kamara sounds like maybe he'll be back. Mark Ingram and Latavius Murray combined for 15% target share last week. Would make sense that Dalton might be a little bit better for running back receptions than Jameis Winston. So kind of excited to see if we do get Kamara because, Dalton might set up pretty well for him.
I will just say, Pat, it's interesting the Saints are still checking out well in the rushing metrics. It's not like they've been getting hammered by the run, but they've been uncharacteristically giving up like bigger individual rushing performances. They've allowed several 100-yard days, which they had not done since 2020.
Patterson went off against him.
And they've had someone else had a 100-yard day against them too. I can't even remember who it was. But Denny, the Seahawks backfield has also been reduced from 3 men to 2. So maybe that's good for Rashad Penny, right? We still like Rashad Penny? Question mark.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's never going to be as good as it was last week. But in all the key metrics, evasion, yards after contact, everything. I mean, Penny looks almost as good as he did at the end of last year. So
case closed.
He's not seeing the sort of passing down work and route participation that you'd want to see from like a workhorse, typical workhorse back. But I mean, if folks are going to look at last week and say, oh, okay, that's what I get out of Rashad Penny. I mean, you're going to be in for a tough week. I will say that.
Where are you at on the Algier line? Is he firmly ahead of that for you though?
That's a good, when you said it, reflexively I said no, I'd play Penny, but the more I'm thinking of it, perhaps I would lean Algier. I actually think that Algier's hold as a lead back is maybe a little more tenuous than we're thinking.
Yes.
So I might go Penny there.
Yeah, me too.
I think I still go Penny. Caleb Huntley doesn't actually exist. The only undefeated team in football, Philadelphia, arrives in Arizona as 5-point favorites. By the grace of God, the Cardinals are somehow 2-2, but have looked ready for a Cliff Kingsbury. Get a better name for a Cliff Kingsbury firing. Denny, we'll get to the Eagles in a minute, but we will begin with the Cardinals pass catchers. Rondale Moore is back, but are there any Arizona receivers, tight ends we like beyond Hollywood Brown and Zach Ertz? Or Marquise Brown didn't practice Wednesday. He did practice Thursday. He should play. Rondale and Dortch just kind of seem to cannibalize each other last week. It's an elite Eagles pass defense. The lay of the Cardinals passing land, Denny.
Yeah, I'll get to the frustration of the Rondale Moore situation in just a second, but Marquise Brown is like truly dominating air yards. He's seen 40% of the team's air yards this year, 5th highest in the league. That's 5th highest mark in the league overall. He's not exactly running hot either. He's only converting 48% of his air yards into actual yards. So I don't think that this is, super fluky usage or production that we're seeing out of Marquise Brown. I think you can still start him. I mean, this is a tough matchup. I think, one thing, especially like for DFS purposes, that I've been wrong on completely is trying to find a run back option against the Eagles, because the Eagles defense is so strong that there doesn't seem to be a run back except for Jamal Agnew, which I whiffed on last week, I will say. I'm not tilting. So Rondale Moore's usage last week, it stunk because he was used primarily as an outside receiver. He ran only a third of his routes from the slot, while my guy Greg Dortch remained in the slot primarily, I think 76% route rate. So from the slot. And this is actually what Kerrane said last week. He said, hold up, we cannot say Rondale Moore is going to slide into the slot because this is Cliff Kingsbury and Greg Dortch could have that role. Well, he did. Congratulations, Kerrane. You were right on a horrible prediction.
Yeah, just so happy to be right on this. I just Googled it. Rondale Moore still is 5'7". So probably not the best outside
on
wide
the
receiver.
Outside.
Did you guys see Kerrane? We talked about the recap pod where he had an outside route where he finally caught a pass. The problem was he had no clue. He was at the sideline and he was like 2 yards out of bounds and didn't need to be.
Yeah. I hate to bring this back to baseball, but have you ever seen the picture of, I assume it's Jose Altuve standing next to Aaron Judge, and Aaron Judge is like 6'7", and I assume Jose Altuve
he's like 5'5",
5'5", right? And imagine every single defensive back looking like that against Rondale Moore. If he's not playing every single snap in the slot, what are we doing here, Cliff?
I'm pretty sure we could have found a height analogy that didn't involve baseball there. But yeah, it's rough, man. I guess the one thing I'll say is that Rondale Moore ran a route on 94% of dropbacks, which is way higher than we would normally expect for a slot receiver. But this is an offense that uses their slot a lot, so that's also a pretty weak silver lining. It's gross. I mean, it honestly is also a problem because DeAndre Hopkins is going to be back soon.
I keep forgetting about that guy.
When that obviously that doesn't apply to this game, but when that happens, does that mean that Moore is leaving the field because we got to keep Dortch in the
Cliff
slot?
Wants nothing more than to kick Rondale Moore off the field.
This is bad, guys.
Yes, it is.
It's real bad news. Real good news, Kerrane, was Miles Sanders having a career week 4, some might say, including the box score, because it was a career week for Miles Sanders. Are we liking him as maybe a top 15 guy at this point? As he finally sees control of this backfield? He did this even with Jalen Hurts still getting a rushing touchdown. I think still carrying the ball like 15 or 16 times. At long last, is it Miles Sanders season?
I mean, I definitely think he showed that he has the ceiling. He's running back 16 now in expected points per game, up from running back 29 last week. He had a massive workload last week in the rain. But, even last week, he did lose out on a touchdown to Kenny Gainwell. So, it's not going to be all that consistent. It's going to continue to be frustrating, I think. And, with the Eagles last week, rainy, windy conditions, Jalen Hurts struggling, and Trevor Lawrence struggling badly, and they flipped the script. They went super run heavy. I don't think we're going to see that a lot. Now, it's definitely interesting that they have that gear and they were highly successful doing that. So I think that does open up a ceiling where, if they need to kind of have a counter punch, they've got one in Miles Sanders and Jalen Hurts on the ground. But their primary method of attack, and I think it really sets up for this to be the case against the Cardinals, is that they're going to try to beat teams through the passing game. So in most weeks, I think Sanders is going to frustrate. And probably 3 or 4 weeks from now, we're going to be like, I don't know, is Sanders dust? And then he'll have another blow-up game later. But it's going to be that type of game. One might say better and best ball type of profile here for Miles Sanders.
Do you like Devontae Smith to bounce back as like maybe a wide receiver 2 type this week then? Because he finally had a quiet game in week 4.
I do. One thing I noted as I was doing this isn't out yet, but in the walkthrough you'll see, is that Devontae Smith's running so many routes. This actually applies to Dallas Goedert as well, who's out there, I believe, for every route last week. And they're running so many routes that they're actually kind of able to be a little insulated from the fact that A.J. Brown is just an absolute target monster on his routes, because they're just out there way more than, you'd even expect for full-time players. So I think that when volume picks up for this offense, we do have a chance of spiked weeks for both Smith and Goddard. And this is that setup, at least has the potential to be a high volume game. We need the Cardinals to push back here, which, they haven't always done this season. But, if they're able to kind of push the Eagles a little bit, the Cardinals pass defense is so bad that I think we could see some nice volume on the Eagles side.
Denny, with Carson Wentz's play already circling the drain, the Commanders welcome the Titans and 80,000 of their fans to Washington this week as 2.5-point home underdogs. What do the folks need to know about this game?
Yeah, you got that wrong. It can't be 80,000 because they cover up half the seats in that stadium. So it's
very good point.
Yeah, it's a down bad situation. So, all right. I'm trying to paint a somewhat rosy picture here for Carson Wentz and the
cut his mic.
Good luck, buddy. Have fun.
Wait a second. No, I won't be silenced here. Look, it's a good matchup. The matchup is right. Okay, the Titans are giving up the third highest EPA per play overall and the fifth highest EPA per drop back. Washington, of course, well, not quite as run pass heavy as they were to start the season, but they're still 14th in pass rate over expected. And they remain, I think, pass first primarily. And look, Terry McLaurin, I think is a really good ceiling option here. Not sure about the floor, but the ceiling is there. He's fifth in targets of more than 20 yards. He's third among wide receivers in air yards over the past 3 weeks. And Tennessee has allowed the fourth most yards to wide receivers through week 4. So Carson Wentz does one thing okay, and that's throw it deep and high. And McLaurin gets under those footballs sometimes, and so that maybe we can rely on that. But I know last week was tough, like for everybody in the Washington offense. But that was a horrible matchup for a bad offensive line against a dominant Dallas defensive line. They were never going to succeed. The Commanders were never going to succeed like that. Hopefully they won't be wearing those jerseys. Hopefully
ever again.
Right. Hopefully they get by against, I think, like a burnable Tennessee defense. The Tennessee defense doesn't scare me.
After the season, the Commanders are going to trade Carson Wentz to Denny.
Hey, he just needs the right
himself as a Carson Wentz guy. I never thought I'd see this.
That's right.
By the way, working in Denny's points favor is that Jahan Dotson seems to be trending towards not playing with a hamstring injury, perhaps leaving Terry McLaurin as the only show in town down the field. My fear for this game, by the way, though, Denny, is like it's kind of one of those games where they're good matchups for each other. Like Carson Wentz is a good match for a struggling defense, and I just worry like it's going to be the Titans taking the day. But you're correct that it is a very good matchup on paper.
I think Washington will lose, but I think it could be fun.
Well, it is a road game for them at their own stadium, just like every game.
It's got to be so demoralizing.
It is. The players basically openly cry about it. This is so dumb. I'm like, please, just be a normal franchise so we can have fans again. And Daniel Snyder's, I prefer not to.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts said
because he'd have to sell the franchise.
Yeah,
for that to happen.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts said that fans were great. He said that after they played in Washington.
That's always a great sign. Hey, at least Jalen Hurts practicing the art of forgiveness after the stadium literally collapsed on him last year. Kyle Dvorchak, and perhaps the most unspeakable matchup of the year so far.
You're going to give me this game. I know. I can see it in your eyes.
No, it's an afternoon game. You're not doing an afternoon. Oh, no,
nice. Let's go.
Actually, I'm not sure. The Panthers host the San Francisco 49ers as nearly touchdown home underdogs. Patrick Kerrane is a stat he was dying to share in a few minutes. But first, Kyle, give us the lay of the sorry land on the 49ers at Panthers. 39 total.
Yeah, man, a brutal total for this game. And I guess maybe, and I don't feel confident in saying this, but maybe the optimistic sense from what we saw last week was DJ Moore and Christian McCaffrey combined for a 56% target share. They were hovering just above 40% on the year before that. CMC went 81, scored a touchdown. I believe he caught all 9 of his passes. DJ Moore saw 11 targets. But the thing is, if we're banking on them seeing, maybe some weeks they see, let's just combine them for 30, 40% target share, and sometimes they eclipse above 50. You need them to see 70+% because the offense is so bad that in any week that we don't see them absolutely dominate the ball, that we're not going to get a good game from specifically DJ Moore, but even McCaffrey, he just has to get there on the ground. And that's not what we wanted when we drafted McCaffrey at 101 over Jonathan Taylor, even with Taylor hurt this week. So to me, last week was a bit of a sense of optimism in the sense of we saw Baker Mayfield finally decide that, hey, I have 2 great players on my team. I'm just going to target them all game. But the offense is so bad. They rank last in overall yards per game, just combined offense, that even if we get a large target share or a large share of the, the carries, the overall offense from McCaffrey, I'm not excited about them. Maybe I'm starting them more as a flex, McCaffrey as a top 10 running back, but I'm not excited about it. On the other side, I have a little sense of optimism. Deebo Samuel, once again, played fewer than 10 snaps at running back. He saw a 26% target share. He's doing the thing we want him to do. He's playing mostly receiver, and then he sprinkles in a few carries, which he's really efficient at. And that's what we want to see because we want him to be the alpha one. And then George Kittle, again, a little sense of optimism in the sense of he's ran 80% of the team's routes over the past 2 weeks, plus 90% snap share over the past 2 weeks. I think the injury issues are completely gone. He's playing all the snaps, so I'm not concerned. He's just George Kittle in the sense that some weeks he goes for 180 and he breaks the slate, and some weeks he goes 4 for 40, and that hurts. And that's just what you have to deal with, but you're starting him.
I kind of like, by the way, Kittle this week, where it seems like Kyle Shanahan's beginning to get sensitive about the narrative with George Kittle. And I do think like a blow-up game, maybe coaching-inspired blow-up game is coming soon for George Kittle. But what is coming right now is Pat Kerrane's stunning Baker Mayfield stat. What is it, Pat?
Well, I tweeted this out, but I just am so tickled by this because I was, when you're writing stuff up, it's like he's 33rd out of 33 qualifying quarterbacks in EPA per play. Okay, he's worst. He's the last. But then it's like, well, what else can I compare him to? So I went and found the running EPA, the EPA per rush of teams, and started comparing Baker Mayfield's efficiency compared to running games. And obviously, passing the ball is more efficient than rushing the ball. The top 6 quarterbacks in EPA per play are all more efficient than every running game in the entire NFL. So not a particularly high bar I'm setting to say, hey, be more efficient than running games. 26 running games are more efficient than Baker Mayfield this year. 26.
Wow.
Dude, him and Matt Rule are just a match made in hell. Like, Rule wouldn't know what to do with like a good quarterback with Baker Mayfield. He's basically just praying someone like comes up to him and like takes his headset, like, oh, let me have a shot. Coach, it's just the weather's rough today. You didn't get much sleep last night. Just let me see if I can. He's like, please, yes, thank you. I've just been waiting for someone, please, and do anything with Baker Mayfield. He has no, This
we want Sam Darnold.
Sam Darnold's very hurt right now. He's not going to be back for a while if you are really desperate down bad in this situation.
I'm not sure talk about famous last words, man. We want Sam Darnold.
He's the Kenny Pickett in this scenario. He's going to chuck it up at least. Chuck it up.
That is true, actually. Man, DJ Moore, wide receiver 40, not loving it.
David Tepper is going to need to find a new hobby.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. David Tepper, David Tepper, he's a fake analytics guy because he's come in and this has been what's happened. Like,
right.
He was easily hoodwinked by Matt Rule. Yeah, I'm an analytics guy.
Yeah, sure.
You're dude, when Jets GM Joe Douglas gets the better of you, you're not doing well, right? Like that is not the sign of advanced analytics. When you're trading for Sam Darnold, who's been bad throughout his career, we're trading for Baker Mayfield, who's been bad throughout his career. Like you don't get it, man. You just don't understand how football works.
When does the new season of Drive to Survive come out? Because maybe we can get Tepper into F1, get him over,
where his billions can be put to better use.
Yeah.
Anyone can run a football team. The Raiders and Chiefs meet in this week's highest totaled matchup at 51. The Chiefs are 7-point home favorites, Kyle Dvorchak. We finally saw some Sky Moore in week 4. Fantasy alert, folks. Do we think that maybe a change in deployment is on tap in the Chiefs receiver corps?
We're getting there, right? I don't think it is fantasy relevant for this week, but I do think for the long term, it's optimistic, hopefully, that Sky Moore had a 26% snap rate. And then on those routes he ran, he was targeted on 36% of them, which obviously is elite, although for these sort of back end of the roster, or at least back end of the rotation kind of guys, you would think they're getting in to get schemed the ball. But I do like the fact that when he gets on the field, he's getting the ball. So I think for your fantasy leagues, if you I assume everyone cut Sky Moore reasonably so long time ago, but I don't hate stashing him as far as maybe he's the guy you need for weeks 10, 11, 12, 13. We have seen absolutely nothing from Juju, from MVS. These guys are producing nothing. No 100-yard games, no touchdowns. They lead the league. They lead the team, in terms of routes run, but they're not doing anything with that opportunity. So the volume is up for grabs. It's Sky Moore. Maybe it's Mecole. Obviously, it's been Travis Kelce so far, and somehow Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But there is a role to be played on this offense that they're just begging for, and we're getting nothing from Juju and MVS. So although this is not a week I will tout as far as like a season-long perspective, Sky Moore, I think you want to be stashing him because he's the best shot they have.
I think that's man, Juju. That's one I already said on the podcast. I apologize. Like,
dude, we just got it wrong. We're wrong.
Exactly. I think it was Tuesday show we talked about where like I was right in that he's going to be the most targeted receiver.
Yeah.
I was horribly wrong in inferring there was upside there because it's Juju Smith-Schuster. There's just not.
Well, here's the other thing with MVS and Juju is that they're actually seeing their routes decline. This is also true of Mecole Hardman. I don't know that it's necessarily related to Sky Moore. He only had like 20-something route percentage last week. It's related to the fact that they're running out 2 tight end sets. They have Jody Fortson and Noah Gray.
Justin Watson.
Yeah. So this heavy personnel is like, it's been bad for these wide receivers because it could be good for them if now they're competing against Jody Fortson instead of another wide receiver for targets, but there's still a rotation. So there's like a rotation plus fewer wide receiver routes overall. So it's just a really bad situation to be one of the underperforming guys. I think ultimately there's going to be upside here once Sky Moore takes over as the wide receiver one.
Let's go.
Whoa. Well, it was good. It was good to see him get into the rotation in the second half against Tampa. Like he clearly is a boost for that offense with how those receivers have been bad. Like there's no two ways about it. They've been bad.
They have been very bad. And yeah, Sky was basically only playing special teams before last week. So it's time to try something new, something to look forward to. Denny, are we looking forward to Clyde Edwards-Helaire as an RB2? Is this actually happening? Is he getting safer? Is he no longer just touchdowns? What's going on with CH in the Chiefs backfield?
Yeah, I mean, the regression talk is just being thrown back in our faces week in and week out. He's like breaking records basically with the amount of receiving touchdowns he's seen through 4 games. It cannot hold. Saying that, he, last week in positive game script, he saw 19 carries. I know Isaiah Pacheco saw 11 carries and looked good doing it. But yeah, I mean, he remains the RB1 through, over the course of the first 4 weeks of the season. CEH has 40% of the Chiefs rushing attempts, averaging over 5 yards a carry, has a couple rushing touchdowns. So I do think that he's a floor option who keeps hitting his ceiling, against all odds. Just as long as we're talking about this backfield, first of all, I think you're playing CEAs, 12-team leagues. You keep playing them. But as long as we're talking about the KC backfield, you get Pacheco. He needs to be picked up in 12-team leagues, as a contingency option. It would seem that he would be the early down back. Maybe Jerick McKinnon would eat into the routes, whatever. But you could have like an RB2-3 there if something happened to Edwards-Helaire.
He was dropped in one of my high stakes leagues, and we spent.
I'd like to join this league.
First you fainted, and then what happened?
Then we spent over $500 of our $1,000 free agent acquisition budget to pick up Pacheco. We half the budget to get him. We did get him. Pretty excited.
I would hope.
I will say last week, Clyde Edwards-Helaire ran more routes than Jerick McKinnon, and he's been elite in yards per route run this year. That's the thing we always wanted him to do. He's also scoring touchdowns in the red zone. He's getting routes. Like, do I think he's good? Of course not. I'm not a rube. But do I think he is doing the thing he was supposed to do when he was drafted in the first round on an offense?
Do you see that ball clang off his hands? He's
Look,
wide
all
open.
right. I don't watch film. I have never. What is football? Who knows? No, a television.
How do you cover the games when you do that?
At the end of the game, I see a box score, and I assume that everything I see happened as I would expect it to have happened. I actually have seen that Clyde Edwards-Helaire drop. Fiction. It is brutal, but He's still good in yards per route run. The spreadsheet still stays good.
No, he is. No. His yard, everything looks solid now. You cannot bank on him constantly catching like little like flip behind the back passes for touchdowns near the goal line. Like that's not going to keep happening. But yeah, I think that he has enough going for him where you can confidently plug him in a 12-team league.
I do too.
Kerrane and the other backfield, Josh Jacobs, career day in week 4. Like Josh McDaniels, like desperately wanted to patriotify, or whatever the word is, this backfield. He signed Brandon Bolden. He wanted Zamir White to be his new James White. None of those plans worked. Like he's finally admitted that if he's going to give touches to this backfield, it just needs to be Josh Jacobs. Is this for real? Is he maybe pushing for RB1 value? I hate saying this, but just
89% snap share last week.
Man,
I mean, he's RB6 in expected points right now. Here's some running backs he's ahead of: Christian McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, Leonard Fournette, Najee Harris. Like, yes, he's pushing for RB1 value. Now, I don't think he's an RB1. I think he's like a high-end RB2 because I'm not completely buying this snap share stuff. I don't think he's like fully game script independent. You know, he could be scripted out. He's run around on 50% of dropbacks though. So like as long as it's back and forth, I think he'll be involved. Maybe if they're playing way from behind, he won't be out there in kind of a hurry up type offense. But you know, he is involved in the passing game. He's involved. I mean, 89% snaps. You're pretty much involved in everything. So yeah, I think high end RB2 for Josh Jacobs.
Real quick, what do we do with Darren Waller? Does anyone have a Darren Waller take? Like, is there anything actually concerning? This seems like basically a few slow games.
It felt to me like a little more than a few slow games, the way his target share has dropped. They're using him more outside. But to me, if you have Devontae Adams who enters the offense and he immediately has a massive 30+% target share, and then Darren Waller has a target share that is his lowest dating back to his first year, which was he hardly even knew the Raiders at that point. I think it was 2018. Like, it's not that hard to put 1 and 2 together to realize that Devontae Adams showing up in the offense has crowded Darren Waller out. I don't think he is as down bad as Kyle Pitts because the offense is far better for passing production. But it's clear that he's not the alpha 1 Darren Waller that we were used to in years past. And it's not shocking because they had Devontae Adams.
Yeah, he's actually he's still top 10 amazingly in tight end target share through week 4. And I think that shows you just how bad the tight end position is.
Exactly.
That's an indictment.
Yes,
yeah, it is. It is. And so, you know, if you have Darren Waller, you have to keep playing him. Like, you're not going to scoop up Conk Daddy and play him over Darren Waller. Okay.
I don't know. Depends how weird you are. You might. No, you're not. To be clear, you're absolutely not.
Kerrane, fresh off getting demolished in Philadelphia, the Jaguars look to rebound as touchdown home favorites against the number 1 pick seeking Houston Texans. What is there to know about this game, if anything?
Look, the Texans, okay, they are trying. They're actually trying. They rank 7th in pass rate over expected. They've been aggressive in neutral situations. They're 11th in situation neutral pass rate. They're 3rd in pass rate over expected on 1st and 10. That generally sets your passing game up for success. They're setting up for success, and they rank 31st in EPA per play per dropback. They've been a terrible passing game, but they're doing what they can.
Nevertheless,
I think you could see some competence here. I think the Jaguars defense, is a little bit overrated. They played Carson Wentz, Matt Ryan, an injured Justin Herbert. They got Jalen Hurts in the rain. So there's a couple quarterbacks that could have exposed them by now, but haven't been able to. They rank 22nd in coverage grades still, which makes me feel like, you know, this defense might be like way worse than we realize. So that makes me a little bit interested in Nico Collins, you know, mildly interested. I think it's a good spot for Brandon Cooks. Pierce looks like a solid running back 2 option this week. You know, he's going to be kind of a reflection of the overall offense. And, you know, they could be okay this week. On the Jaguar side, this looks like a bounce back spot. Lawrence did not play well against the Eagles. 30th in EPA per play, 33rd in CPOE. So very gross game from him. But we have the weather issues. I'm kind of willing to say I'm not worried about Jalen Hurts because of that game. I'm also not super worried about Lawrence. Even if you are a little bit worried about Lawrence, his big thing has been when he's pressured this year. And the Texans rank 25th in pass rush grade. So I think Lawrence should be fine. You know, this is a pretty good matchup specifically for his skill set. Christian Kirk is probably the way, we want to play this on the Jaguars side. He had a 41% target share and a 50% air yard share and 2.31 yards per route run while running a route on 96% of dropbacks last week in his absolutely horrible game. This was a offensive volume type of issue for Kirk. I don't think it was anything to freak out about. Like once we get into a dry situation, against a weak defense, Kirk still looks like a very strong play to me. Travis Etienne, he quietly led the backfield last week in snaps. He was also 52% to 33% in route participation over James Robinson. I think he's kind of back on the RB2 radar at least. And then Robinson looking more like a low floor RB2.
Against a very bad Texans run defense, at least. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, there's some upside there.
There'll be some upside. Yeah, I mean, as much as that's a concept that exists, James Robinson upside, I'm still not really sure that's actually a thing. But we would end the show talking about the reeling Los Angeles Rams hosting the Cowboys as 5.5-point home favorites, which seems, I don't know. Should the Rams be 5.5-point home favorites over anybody right now?
I don't think so.
Especially a team with Micah Parsons. Kerrane, well, I was going to say we'll get to the Cowboys in 1 second. I think we're just going to skip talking about the Cowboys today. Are there any silver linings to be found with the struggling Rams offense, or is it as bad as it appears on my television every week in prime time?
I think it's as bad, and it could get worse. They rank last in pass blocking grade going against Micah Parsons. That's probably going to go awesome. And then when you look at Cooper Kupp, who is surviving this, he has a 37% target share. That's the second highest number we've seen since 2012, if it were to hold for a whole year. Brandon Marshall's 41%, which is just unbelievable. What? 41% in 2012.
Dude, Brandon Marshall stats are so cool from back in the day. Having not lived through that because I'm just a young Zoomer boy, finding out about them is unreal.
But, I mean, other than that, we're talking Julio Jones at 35% 1 year, and then it's like you don't see anyone above 34%. Cooper Kupp was at 32% last year, so he can have a massive, massive target share. He can sustain a massive target share, but I don't think even Cooper Kupp can sustain this. So if we see him fall back to the pack just a little bit in target share and this offense doesn't take a step forward, which, man, it's hard to imagine them doing that this week. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
I mean, the Cowboys were literally ranked first. Or the Cowboys, I said it right. The Rams were literally ranked first last year in pass blocking grade per PFF, and they are dead last. You cannot find a larger discrepancy between year over year.
That's as big as it gets.
It's as big as it gets. We only have 32 teams. And between that and the loss of like Odell Beckham / Robert Woods at the beginning of the year, this team looks lost. They look completely lost.
Yeah, it's just, man, of all the people, like basically every Ram talked about retiring, and then they all came back except for Andrew Whitworth. And
maybe they could have used Whitworth over literally every other Ram.
Yes, including Sean McVay. Sorry, Sean. No offense. But, Denny, we're talking about how everything's so bleak. Is it the same thing in the Rams backfield? Anything to differentiate Cam Akers or Darrell Henderson? I mean, and if there is, does it even matter?
No. It's really gross. I mean, basically, Cam Akers is completely useless if the Rams are playing from behind. Akers has 27 rushing attempts in 2 Rams victories this year. He has 11 rushing attempts in 2 Rams losses. Meanwhile, Darrell Henderson, as the Zoomers are calling him, Hendo, has I think I've been canceled. Henderson has 105 pass routes to 36 pass routes for Akers. So we know the score there. We know how they're being used. I guess since the Rams are favored here, there's a possibility they'll see the sort of game script where Akers can get some opportunity. But man, I think you have to be pretty desperate in a 12-team league to play Akers.
Yeah, I tweeted this. I think so it worked. I think we talked about this on a different show too. Like the Rams' approach of like selling out to win the Super Bowl worked. They won the Super Bowl, but I think now we're seeing the effects of a team that never makes first-round picks. That's only made 13 top 100 selections since 2016. The baseline, I think, for that's at least 21. Like just trading away all their top 100 picks. And you're just seeing a team that has no depth. And it's like the second someone gets hurt, they're basically playing practice squad guys, including at receiver. I mean, Ben Skowronek should just not be a thing. Like, it's easy to see this getting worse.
He's better than Allen Robinson.
Better than Tutu Atwell, who they used to.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think this almost lets them off the hook a little bit to say they haven't had picks. They've spent the picks on Tutu Atwell and Van Jefferson. I mean,
yeah,
if they drafted okay at wide receiver, I mean, they wouldn't be dealing with this. They're making fun of Strange, the Patriots guy. I thought that guy was going to go day 3. No.
Yeah.
You know where I thought Tutu Atwell was going to go at 156 pounds? Not round 2.
Yeah, man, Sean, we're all thinking of you. You're the boy genius. It's time to prove it. All right. And we're all thinking of ourselves because we've been talking for a long time, and it's time to end the show. But we got to it. Except for the Cowboys. Sorry, we didn't talk about you, Cowboys. I mean, whatever. The Cooper Rush, quote unquote, Cowboys, they exist.
It's all CeeDee Lamb. Second and Whopper in the league.
By the way,
second behind
CeeDee Lamb and skip the rest of the guys. They're boring.
CeeDee Lamb sat out Thursday's practice because, quote, the GPS numbers were too high. His GPS numbers, I swear.
That's so awesome. That is so cool.
We have a blurb. It means that
he had the zoomies. Basically, he had the zoomies.
The team tracks his steps.
Huh.
And,
so he'd run too much the previous day.
And they were too high. So basically, what I'm saying is the analytics have gone too far, and I now
this doesn't actually seem.
I'm now a film guy. I don't know.
Jenny's a film guy. We're all film guys because you can watch this on YouTube. You can listen to it, of course, wherever you download and subscribe to podcasts, which you already know if you've made it this far in the show. You're subscribed to us and listening to us. But subscribe and. In theory, you don't have to subscribe to our website, but subscribe to the articles we post because they're all awesome. Kerrane's walkthrough, Denny's waivers, Kyle's 32 facts, my rankings, all of our podcasts, all of our live shows, Kyle Dvorchak on Thursday evenings with Mr. Lawrence Jackson and Vaughn. Thanks for listening. We hope you heard something useful. We hope you had a little fun. We hope you learned something about email ethics. And for Pat, for Kyle, and for Denny, I'm the other Pat. We'll catch you later.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and Rotoworld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from Rotoworld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.